Well, I'm available to start at right tackle.
You can't see when I have clothes on.
All right. Well, there's not an even playing field. There's never been an even playing field. There never will be an even playing field.
What shampoo do you use on your hair?
You don't need to be Superman to play in this offense.
You're listening to The Red Zone.
Welcome, Badgers fans, to another episode of The Red Zone. Later on the podcast, we're going to have Badgers tight end Jake Ferguson on to talk about his breakout redshirt freshman season and kind of looking ahead to the Michigan game. But first, we've got John Veldhuis from BadgerBlitz.com here. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on. I'm glad I didn't ruin your previous episode where I was on. It must not have been too bad.
Oh, no. Yeah, you were great on the last episode. I think the bowl predictions one was a pretty popular one.
You got a good response from it?
I think it was a good response, and
right.
we're gonna kind of take a lothere those later on in the podcast here.
We don't have to. I don't think that's necessary.
I think you might be in better shape than me. I don't know. Hey,
you went super bold though, so yeah, that's true. Maybe my hedging my bets a little bit.
Some of mine are going to look quite ridiculous at this point, but that's how bold predictions go,
that's
right?
True.
I mean,
yeah.
If you're going to go bold, then you got to put yourself out there a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like what Joe Rudolph was just talking about with us. You got to put yourself out there.
Yeah. Well, this Badgers team is coming off a 41-24 win against Nebraska. A game in which I think was an encouraging performance. Yet again, there was still a lot of issues. This is, I think you have to take a lot of the things that happened with a grain of salt, considering this is an 0-5 Nebraska team that has been playing really poorly. So even though some areas improved, I think they still have a lot to prove for themselves. Wisconsin does going into this Michigan game. But what were your impressions of the Nebraska game? Or are you encouraged by the performance overall? And what are you kind of still concerned about?
So I agree with what you just said. There are definitely some positive signs and some things that show that the Badgers are still in need of some work. I think offensively, obviously it was, I think, a pretty encouraging game. Through the first quarter, I think it was fair to be a little uneasy just because I think they had the two drives where they didn't finish both drives in the first quarter because their first drive was like 7 minutes long or something. But their first two drives, I think they had to settle for field goals in both spots. And so I was a little on the edge about that just because Nebraska's defense had allowed so many touchdowns when opponents had gotten into the red zone so far this season. And so that didn't seem like a great sign early. But then right after that, they kind of flipped things around, and I think they scored on 4 of their next 5 scored touchdowns, I should say, on 4 of their next 5 drives where they were trying to advance the ball, because they had one where they kneeled or took a knee at the end of the second half to get to halftime. So that's encouraging. And then when Nebraska, their offense with Adrian Martinez, I was very impressed with Martinez in particular, and they have a deep group of wide receivers to work with. And so when they were really trying to kind of force the issue, they didn't go away in the third and fourth quarter. I was encouraged that the Badgers were able to respond after a couple of those touchdowns and to put another one and another one onto the board just to make sure that they still had kind of that multi-score lead and never really allowed Nebraska to really get within striking distance. And so I think that's definitely encouraging. The defensive side, I think there were definitely some issues and things that need to be straightened out. Obviously, the big concern is your depth in the secondary at this point. Just because you have a couple of your cornerbacks that are questionable for this week, you're going to be missing Scott Nelson for the first half of the game after he was ejected for targeting last week, with having to defend Martinez last week and that group, the deep group of wide receivers, like what I was talking about, Nebraska was able to put a ton of passing yards on the board against them. And so that, if you just look at it, that's concerning. And it's concerning because the Badgers are also going to go play a Michigan team that is good on offense. I don't think they're great, but they're good, and they have a mobile quarterback who will also be able to extend plays. Probably not to the same extent that I think Martinez is able to, because he's just so quick. And so he's that kind of that change of direction that just makes it really hard to corral him when he gets out of the pocket. And I don't think Shea Patterson has that same element, but he can move around a little bit, and so that's something to watch for. In watching the game back a second time, I was a little more encouraged just because a lot of those passing yards came on some big plays, and I think some of them were plays where I think it was a young secondary that needs to learn or needs to learn when to take chances on plays to make big plays and when they need to, just kind of make the routine play and help the team run out the clock. There were a couple times where I thought, like with Scott Nelson's, the one where he fell down and then Spielman kind of came across on that crossing route and then scored.
The 75-yarder.
Right. Yeah. I think that was one where he might have been playing a little bit too aggressive and then had to try and make up for it. And obviously he fell down and, there was nobody behind him because he was playing free safety. And that's kind of what happens when you don't have any deep coverage behind you and you fall down. People are going to run right by you. And so there were a couple times like that where you look at it and, they put up a lot of those yards in the third and fourth quarter when it felt like the game was kind of over. I mean, there's still plenty of time to play, but the Badgers were ahead by 17, 20 points, somewhere in there. It just didn't seem like there was going to be enough time for Nebraska to, score, stop Wisconsin, that kind of thing. And so I think situationally, it's a little bit better than you think just looking at the box score. I don't think the Badgers are on the verge of allowing that many passing yards again, but you never want to see that happen. And so I think it'll be important for the Badgers this week to really stress not only just regular defensive fundamentals to their young corners, especially the ones who are going to play. And it's important for them to get their other guys that are questionable onto the field if they can. But you also want to make sure that they don't lose confidence from coming off of a game where a quarterback like Martinez was able to put up that many yards, just because you're not going to face somebody that's going to make you cover for 10, 12, 15 seconds at a time when he's scrambling around and your defensive line is trying to stop him.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us to another point too. Is you mentioned they had a lot of time. I mean, he had a lot of time to throw at times in that game, but I didn't think the pass rush was as bad as people made it out to be. I thought that a lot of fans on Twitter after the game that's kind of one of their main points when I asked for their thoughts. It's like, we need a better pass rush. This is, but I thought it was actually improved from.
They were getting close. They had some times where they were coming up on him.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare that to say the Iowa game where I thought it was actually really bad, I think they definitely had some. I think they won more one-on-one matchups than they did in that Iowa game, and I thought that Jim Leonard was a little bit more creative in some of the pressures he brought, and I just thought Martinez was able to escape at some time. And we have to remember too that a lot of the game plan for Wisconsin defense was to try to contain Martinez from taking off and running, and they weren't always successful in that. But it's also a little bit of a safer rush. I think I'm talking about this in my film room this week. That's going to be probably posted by the time this podcast is posted, and if you guys check that out on madison.com, it's
good plug.
Yeah, I'm trying to work on my plugs in the middle of my answers on the podcast. But I think there was even some times where maybe you only bring 3 guys, and you play a little bit. They use a QB spy some, and so I think that a lot of times just because Martinez had some time to throw, it doesn't necessarily mean that the pass rush completely failed. I think there were times where he kind of scrambled around back there for a good while, but the coverage kind of did their job, and then he ran for 6 yards, but that's just because he's that talented. But I think the pass rush was it encouraged me that it was a little bit better. Now, the caveat is, of course, that Nebraska line wasn't very good, and I think in a lot of ways they're facing a different animal this week against Michigan. Oh yeah, so
in watching Nebraska's offense, that offense with Scott Frost running it, I mean that's very different compared to the rest of the Big Ten right now. And so just from a schematic standpoint, what you're going to be asked to do on defense and how you're going to try and stop them and contain them, it's going to be very different compared to when you have to play Michigan, which is going to run pretty much a traditional kind of Big Ten pro style offense. I mean, they're going to run the ball, they're going to do some play action passing, they're not going to do the the up tempo 5 to 8 seconds of play scramble around type of deal. I mean, it's I think that offense is going to be I'm very interested to see what that's going to look like in a couple of years when Scott Frost has been there for a couple of years and has his guys there, and you have Martinez. Seems like he's going to be a multi-year starter. I was pretty impressed with him, and so it's going to be a different challenge this week. And I think you'll see maybe Wisconsin's defense play a little bit closer to how they did against Iowa, just because the offenses are a little bit more similar than what I don't think they're going to see anything close to what Nebraska showed in this over the rest of the season. I mean, maybe Purdue, with Jeff Brom, they do some creative things that they're going to kind of speed things up a little bit. That'll be a little bit different, but Michigan's much more traditional. I think that helps the Badgers a little bit. It's not like you have to go and play another Nebraska offense this week. That would be trouble with your secondary kind of in rough shape at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. And offensively, Wisconsin rushed for 370 yards. I thought it was a big game for the offensive line, sort of kind of refreshing to see them dominate the way they did. And yet again, it's, this is against Nebraska's defense, who's given up a lot. So, I mean, have you seen enough from, obviously, Wisconsin's offensive line came into the season really hyped. Three All-Americans returning. We were saying that, this could possibly be one of the best lines in school history, if not the best. Have you seen enough from them that makes you believe that they could go into Michigan and win the battle up front with that Michigan front? Or is this going to be like a real measuring stick for that group?
I've seen enough to where I've been impressed with them. I think they still have a little bit more to prove. If they're going to earn the hype that they got in the preseason, they're going to have to play well this week against Michigan, because Michigan's defense is loaded with some really talented players in that front seven, and if they can kind of neutralize that, then I think they will have done what they needed to do to kind of earn that hype coming into the season. I've been impressed with Tyler Biadasz all season. I think there have been a couple games where there have been times where I think Cole Van Lanen needs to play left tackle more than he does, but I know they want to get John Dietzen in there, and he's been good, when he's been in there. But I think Cole Van Lanen is somebody that's been really impressive. And then I think Bo Benchwall's had a really good season too. It's just there's been times where it seemed like things have been up and down a little bit, and they've done something well and another thing not so well. I think they really need that game where they run block well and they pass block well and kind of put it all together like that. I think that's what I'm kind of waiting for to see, and this would be a really good week for them to do it, just to make sure that not only can they open up some running lanes for Jonathan Taylor to try and establish the run against a Michigan defense that's done a really good job of stopping it so far, but also to protect Alex Hornibrook and to give the Badgers some chances to make some plays in the passing game that could open things up a little bit more for them on the ground too.
Yeah, I agree with you that Van Lanen should probably play more left tackle. I think he's been really great this year, and
particularly good at pass blocking. I think. Yeah, I don't know that he's a lot. I'd have to double check the stats, but if he's a lot of pressure this year, I don't remember seeing it.
I think he did. I can't remember if it was BYU or Iowa, but one of those games he had a lot of pressure. But yeah, it's been very few and far between, and I think there's been some games where he's been a monster in the run game too.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
And Benshaw, like I feel like a couple years ago he kind of got overrated. And,
I thought so too.
But
honestly, I mean, like it seemed like
he's gotten to a point where, I mean, he's a legit All-American guy now. And
for sure.
He's a guy that's just, I've been so impressed with his progression just from his freshman year to now. It just seems like he keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, when he got bumped from tackle to guard, and then got, I can't remember if it was all Big Ten or something. There was a time where, earlier in his career, I thought that it might have been more of a like a group award, that you find the best playing Wisconsin offensive lineman and you maybe put them in the All Big Ten team. But I mean, Benchwall has taken some big strides in his career, and he's playing really well in his senior season for sure.
So the line right now for this game against Michigan is Wolverines by 7.5. I think that's about right. I think I'm probably going to pick a Michigan cover here. I just think there's too many injuries on defense. I think I'm probably going to pick Michigan to win by 10 or 14, something like that. I haven't come up with an exact score prediction yet, but what do you kind of think about that as the Wisconsin being an underdog for the first time and by more than a touchdown? Do you think that's appropriate given what we've seen? Given
the injuries, yes. I'm kind of on the same page as you. If I had to pick right now, I'd probably take Michigan by 10, somewhere in there. I mean, if they can get some of their corners healthy, and if you told me that Fan Hicks and Caesar Williams and Deron Harrell and all those that group was going to be ready to play, and you could play at a reasonable level of health for this game, I would feel a little bit better about maybe picking the Badgers to cover. I don't know if I would pick them to win outright, but I'd feel a little bit better about it. The one thing I am still waiting to see with this Wisconsin defense is I want to see which stat is lying right now, because if you take a look, the Badgers are giving up a lot in terms of yards per play, and they're basically the problem with that is that they're not creating third downs that are hard for offenses to convert on, and as a result, they're giving up a lot of third down conversions. The flip side of that is that they've done a very good job of stopping teams from either getting onto the board or they've held them to field goals instead of touchdowns. That seems to me like a tension that in a game on the road against a top 15, top 10-ish team, I feel like one of those things is going to break, and I don't know which one that is. It's maybe the Badgers have just had a string of weeks where they've given up a lot of yards on like one play, and then they've kind of recovered a little bit and held strong and forced a punt later or something like that. Or maybe that's a sign that they've gotten a little bit lucky in some of their stops in the red zone. And so I want to see which of those shows up this week, and I think the Michigan game is going to tell us a lot about that.
Yeah, for me, if the corners are healthy, I'm still picking a Michigan cover. I think actually Isaiah Laudermilk is a bigger deal
that's
against
true
this
too.
team. I mean, if he's out, I think from this Michigan's offense standpoint, you can't. It's sort of like the Iowa game. You can't let them get that running game going and set up their play action. I think if Laudermilk's out, that could really play a big factor in that.
And I think part of the reason Wisconsin has, I think they're through 5 games. I think it's fair to say that the defense at this point has taken a step back from where they were over the last couple of years or so. And I think a big reason for that is the defensive line, I think, is having trouble from a depth perspective and from just an experience standpoint. They just have not been able to do as good of a job stopping the run as the Badgers did when it was Alec James and Connor Sheehy and Chikwe Obasi and Olive Sangapolu, who's still there, but that was a pretty formidable group, and you had 4 or 5 guys that you could rotate in there and kind of keep them fresh. When you're down to Sangapolu and then Matt Henningsen and Caden Lyles and David Pfaff got in there a little bit last week. I mean that group right now has not done the same kind of job of stopping the run, and that plays into teams getting into 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 instead of 3rd and 6, 7, 8, 9 like the Badgers have had over the last couple of years. And so that against a Michigan team that's going to be a little bit more of a traditional offense and will run the ball, I think that will be a key part of this game too.
I hope this doesn't make me look. I hope Wisconsin's made me look bad by saying this, but I think if those corners are out and Laudermilk's out, I think this game has a little bit of blowout potential.
I don't blame you for thinking that way. I mean, I'll wait and see what the Thursday injury report looks like, but the injury report is definitely a big consideration this week. I mean, the Badgers are going to need as many hands on deck as they can get, and it's going to be trouble if they are playing with kind of one hand tied behind their back just from a depth perspective.
All right, you ready to look at our bold predictions?
Oh, God. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Let's do it.
Okay, I guess I'll just go through mine and then yours.
Okay.
We'll just go down the list here. My first one was Alex Hornibrook will make an. I'll just kind of go through these quickly, and if you want to add anything, just chime in.
Yep.
Alex Hornibrook will make an All Big Ten team. Honorable mention does not count. I guess it's still possible.
First, second, and third.
Yeah. Probably unlikely still, but. I have to look at the other quarterbacks.
Yeah, so I think Trace McSorley is still a good bet for that. I think
Dwayne Haskins.
Dwayne Haskins is probably going to be number 1. Although I will say that even if he does not make it, the way he's playing right now, he would probably deserve to make it in a regular season. Because at least if you look at a place like Pro Football Focus, they've been very high on him this season.
Yeah, I mean the third spot is kind of open right now. After you have Haskins and McSorley.
Unless somebody really comes up, I think you might get that one.
Oh. And this one's going to sound really bad.
I remember this one.
Wisconsin will be ranked number 1 in the AP poll for 1 week this season. It didn't work out that way. I think that's pretty much it. They'd have to win the national
it's
championship.
College
for that to
football.
happen.
Crazy things happen, but I think you're that. Yeah, I wouldn't feel.
Yeah, I mean,
about that one.
yeah. The thinking on that was, I kind of thought there was a chance they wouldn't lose till the Penn State game. That was in November.
Yep.
It
made a lot of sense when you were talking about it at the time, 6 weeks ago or whatever.
Yeah. This will be Tyler Biadasch's final season with the Badgers. Now, I think he's played well, but I think that's not looking too likely.
Yeah, I think he has graded out as being one of Wisconsin's best offensive linemen so far this season. I don't know that he's going to get a whole ton of draft hype. Maybe if the Badgers had been ranked number 1 or hadn't lost yet or were still in the college football playoff contention in a more serious way, maybe they would get some people that were taking a look at them. But at this point, it seems like he will be around for a little while.
My next one was Tyler Johnson will lead the team in sacks. He has 0, but the leader only has 2.
That is true. There's plenty of time left on that.
He hasn't really gotten even that close to a sack though. So
that's the problem with that is that he's had opportunities with Andrew Van Ginkel being a little limited. So
and that's kind of one of the things I said. Like if somebody gets injured, maybe he can step up there.
So that played out. Just you can get like half credit for that. Maybe I don't know.
My last one was Wisconsin will record 10 or fewer interceptions this season. They have 4 through 5 games, so it's I'm probably on pace to barely not get that.
So you were probably like when the Badgers had all those guys that were dropping picks left and right in the Nebraska game. You were probably like pumping your fist over the desk. Oh yeah.
If I'd remembered about our bowl predictions at that point, I would have been pumping my fist. I forgot that was one of mine.
Yeah. Moving on. That just reminds me of was it George Rushing? I think one of our like media prop bets or something.
Yeah.
George, I think I needed like 3 catches from George Rushing in a bowl game or something, and I think he got it.
It was like he was 1 below or over. It was like 8.5 was the number for the season or something
Jesse
like
Temple
that.
still owes me a drink for that.
I think he still owes us all something. But okay, so your first one's looking really good. Alex Hornibrook will throw 10 or less interceptions this year.
What's he at?
He only has 2 through 5 games, I believe.
Yep.
Let me maybe double check that. Yep, 2 through 5 games. So he's on pace for only like 5 this season or 6 maybe.
All right.
So see if you can keep that up. Your next one was that Kendrick Pryor will lead the team in catches.
That's going to take some.
Yeah, he's got 9 right now, and AJ Taylor's leading with 18.
AJ Taylor has definitely kind of sucked up a lot of the targets through these first couple of games or so. At the time, it was hard to tell because they hadn't played yet. Exactly what the target distribution was going to be, and really with Danny Davis being out for those first couple of games, I think AJ Taylor really built up a nice chemistry with Alex Hornibrook, so that probably played into that a little bit.
The next one was Scott Nelson will lead the team in interceptions, and that's he's tied for the lead with 1.
Okay.
With 3 other people. So
I remember we were talking that one was not the boldest in the world, so I don't know that I'm going to give him a lot of credit for that if that happens.
Caden Lyles will stay at defensive end after this season. Now this one, you can't really. How do you feel about this one now?
I'm not feeling so hot about this one. I thought that. It's hard to tell. I mean, we were just talking about the defensive line, not being in the same place that they were over the last couple of years or so, and I think that has played out. I think Lyles has been fine, but obviously I think he would have to be playing a lot better for that to be in the consideration, considering the holes that the Badgers are going to have to fill on the offensive line next year. So I'm not going to say I have any regrets about that one, but you never know. We'll see. But I think his future his best position still looks to me like it's on the offensive line.
I thought that was one of your most bold, and so it doesn't. Who knows? Maybe they'll decide to do that.
We'll see.
Your next one I don't think was that bold, but it's leading right now.
I remember.
You had Ryan Connolly will lead the team in tackles, and he is leading with 29, 3 ahead of TJ Edwards right now. So
not a super bold one. It's one of the more surprising things about the defensive performance this season, I think, is that Ryan Connolly has struggled a little bit more than I thought, and just in terms of, I think he's missed a couple more tackles than you would have expected for a senior linebacker who's played quite a few games for the Badgers over his last couple of years or so. But yeah, I guess that's looking good. I mean, I guess if it ends up that way, then I'll count it. But it's certainly not the boldest one.
Yeah, I think he gets a little over aggressive at times, but he I think he's for a former walk-on, he's really made a lot of himself.
For sure. Yeah.
I think he's still been really good this year. I know he and Edwards both got kind of knocked for their performance against BYU, but I think outside of that game they both played really well.
Right. Well, I mean, that just goes to show anybody listening out there, play it safe on the bold predictions, and you might be in a good place 6 weeks into the season.
It's more fun to do it my way until we go back and look at them,
right?
And notice that mine are way off.
Well, I think if you go super bold and you get one right, then that validates all of your
satisfaction of that. So maybe I'll get a couple. I mean, maybe I'll get the Hornibrook one, which wasn't my most bold. Don't count out the
number one. I mean, college football is crazy. What was that year? Was that? Oh God, was that 2006 through 2007 where there was a
2-loss team in the title game? I think it was LSU in 07, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah,
but
there's been crazy things in college football. You never know.
Yeah, I'm doubting that, but oh well.
Whatever.
Well, thanks for joining me, John. You can follow him on Twitter at John Veldhuis and read his stuff on badgerblitz.com. Thanks for joining me, John.
Thank you for having me back.
Did you kind of expect to make this big of an impact this year? I'm sure you had confidence in yourself, but as a redshirt freshman, you just kind of stepped right in there and started making a lot of plays.
Definitely. I mean, at the beginning of the season, you don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, I tried to make as much of an impact as I could in camp, just trying to make every catch, make the best out of every opportunity that was given to me. And just as I started to catch more balls and make more blocks, I started getting more opportunities, and the coaches started having more trust in me. And I think that really meant a lot to me and really opened up those doors so I could make plays in the season. And it's just been going right, and I've just been getting a lot of opportunities and trying to make the best of them.
Was that sort of the big thing for you this offseason, is that, I think everybody knew by your first year that you could catch the football, but just becoming, passable as a blocker and improving in that area, was that kind of the main thing for you?
Definitely. I mean, my first, that redshirt year was really big for me. Both getting my size up, getting my technique down, and just learning how to block. I think I really took advantage of that year, and then spring ball was also huge for me, and I didn't think it was going to be that big, but it really, every day I came in having one goal for that practice and wanting to do better in blocking, wanting to get the right step, first step, second step, hitting onto all that stuff. And spring ball was really big for me, and then coming in camp I got to be able to showcase all that stuff and really work on the craft, so that was big.
Do you feel like Alex really trusted you right away? It seems like he's just looking for you a lot this year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it really started in camp. Just him throwing the ball to me, and even on indie drills, just I had to make sure I caught everything just so he can trust me, just so he can trust that I catch the ball. And, I think we got a long way to go still, but we're definitely building that, and we're definitely going in the right direction.
I do remember you mentioning a couple weeks ago that you never wanted to drop a ball. That was just one of the things that you just wanted to make sure you never dropped anything. And I think it was after you dropped the ball against Iowa. But how big of a focus is that for you? Because it doesn't seem like you dropped that many, but is that just because of the pressure you put on yourself to make sure you don't do that?
Definitely. I think it really started when I was growing up. My brother was always on me he was usually my quarterback, and when we'd play like kids around the neighborhood, and he'd just dig in on me if I dropped a ball, and he'd just yell at me. So I always said, I'm never dropping a ball. I don't like dropping balls, because I almost feel like my brother will yell at me. And he texted me after that Iowa drop and was like, thank God you got another catch after that, or I would have been calling you screaming. And I was like, all right. And I think that big focus is really big, and in spring ball I really hit on that. And I made a deal with myself that if I was going to drop a ball, I had to do a clean shave. And I hate being clean shaven, so I hate dropping balls, and I hope I don't drop any.
I didn't know Joe was so verbally abusive growing up.
Yeah, I mean we were a big football family, so we played ball a lot, and him being the older brother, he always had the upper hand, and he could always, almost, I wouldn't say boss me around, but kind of in that sense. We played football a lot growing up, and he was always like the coach, quarterback kind of lead role of our team. So.
Yeah, speaking of your family, I go back and watch every game, the broadcast of every game after, and just it seems like every single game, the first time you catch a ball, that's Barry Alvarez's grandson. Do you get kind of tired of hearing that? Because, I mean, it seems like every game, just everyone's always saying that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at the same time, I love my grandpa. I mean, he's my grandpa, but, I mean, I'm Jake Ferguson. I almost don't like being called Barry Alvarez's grandson, not in the sense that I'm his grandson, but it's the sense that I'm me. I'm trying to make a name for myself. I'm trying to almost start that own legacy, just kind of build off of that. And, yeah.
Do you feel like by the end of your career here that people will just start calling you Jake Ferguson?
Hopefully. I hope that happens. I hope that happens this year, honestly. But, I mean, people are always going to say stuff, so, I mean, yeah, not much I can do, really.
What are kind of your long-term goals? Because I think, starting this early, already catching as many passes as you are, I'm sure you could have a pretty productive career. Do you have any long-term goals about what you want to accomplish here?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're capable of winning a championship. I think that's definitely something we could do. That's something we should really strive for. And, I mean, we are striving for it. We need to take those right steps so we can be on that path. And I think as a team we could go like last year and go undefeated throughout the season. In the future years, I mean, we already lost this year, but definitely win out this year and hopefully try to make it into the playoff, and then if not, just win a ball game, just win out from here. It's really what I want this year, and I think we can do that if we really lock in and focus. That's really all I'm thinking about right now is this year, Michigan week. Yeah, so I'm kind of locked in this week. I'm not really thinking about the rest of the season, but that's something in the back of my head.
Do you think this Michigan game, playing a ranked team on the road like this, kind of gives you guys, are you seeing it as an opportunity to sort of get yourself back into that conversation, I guess, nationally? Obviously with the BYU loss, it seems like people kind of forgot about you guys a little bit from the scale of competing for the playoffs, but do you feel like this win can kind of get you back on the map a little bit?
Definitely. I mean, Michigan's always a big game. They're a great program. They have been for years. And being able to go on the road there and showcase what we got, it's going to be exciting. And I'm excited to see what we can do, but it all starts with this week's preparation. So started on Monday, but it also takes today, it takes tomorrow, the rest of the week. And I think we got to be locked in and ready to go.
All right, thanks, Jake.
Appreciate it.
That's going to do it for this week. A big thanks to John and Jake for coming on the podcast. We're going to do another episode of The Red Zone on Friday. It's our mailbag edition, so if you tweet me at Jason_Galloway, you can ask me a question about anything Badgers football related, and I'll do my best to answer it on Friday's podcast. If you haven't yet, you can subscribe to The Red Zone on iTunes or Google Play and help us out that way. And keep visiting madison.com for all of your Badgers football news. Thanks for listening.